are an expert in presentations. And this is something that leaders, CEOs, executives are kind of forced to do at some point in time throughout their career, right? Um, how can they be able to deliver their message in a way that's inspiring, that helps people take action? Like, how would you get going? An executive comes to you right now and it's like, hey, I need help right away. Where do you start?
Okay, so it's interesting that you use the word deliver. You said, how can an executive deliver the message effectively? And the way I would start is I would not start from the delivery side of things. When we think about presenting, public speaking, many people immediately start thinking about exactly that delivery. How can I deliver it more effectively? And when I say delivery, Brian, I mean things like eye contact, body language, gestures, posture, voice. These things are important, but these are not, especially in business communication, they are not the most important thing. So if we want to become more confident presenters, we need to understand that confidence comes from three things. Number one, familiarity and preparation. I watched an interview. I know that you are a sports fan, Brian, and I know that this for you it's mainly football, but I've got an NBA, a basketball example here. I watched an interview of Kobe Bryant, one of the best NBA players of all time. And one question was, Kobe, how is it possible that every time I see you playing, you always look so confident? And he said, the only reason why you think I'm confident is because when you see me doing certain things, I've done those things 1,000 times before. Confidence comes from familiarity, from preparation. And that's the first thing. So I would start from that. And I'm talking about confidence in presenting. It also comes from following a certain process. There's a structured way of thinking about presenting that goes beyond just opening up PowerPoint, because that's the very first thing most people do. They just open up PowerPoint and put together some slides. There's a structured way of thinking about presenting, from understanding the audience to knowing how to identify your key messages, to knowing how to create a clear and engaging storyline, to then, if you need to, knowing how to illustrate your content effectively from a visual perspective, to then we get to the end of the process, which is your ability to make a strong connection with the audience. And you also do that with your delivery skills. And not following this process is often what creates discomfort when we are in front of an audience. And then finally, I would start with people's ability to develop a compelling message, not with their delivery skills. In my experience, Brian, 80%, at least 80% of your confidence, of your effectiveness as a presenter comes from your ability to develop a compelling message. Without a story, I know that you are very much into storytelling. Without a story that resonates with your audience, it doesn't matter how good you are from a delivery perspective. That's where I would start. The message.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I love that. I mean, I love that you brought storytelling in. Um, Maybe let's jump into like complexity. So I think as executives, it's very typical that they have really complex topics that need to get down into the organization, right? And sometimes this can be full of data. It can be just quite simply a complex topic. You know, you have industries that are complex. How can someone be able to deliver? Again, there's that word deliver, but give a presentation, right? That breaks these complex topics down into a simple way that's understandable for everyone, right? What are some ways that they can be able to do that, right? Taking that structure that you mentioned before.
Sure. I'll give you one practical thing we can all do. It's not the only thing we can do. We can discuss in more detail, but definitely one thing we can do is to use simple language, simple words, simple sentences. And Brian, simple can be harder than complex, because anyone can use long, confusing sentences, anyone can use jargon or technical terms or acronyms that you understand, not necessarily the audience. Of course, it always depends on who we have in front of us. It always goes back to the audience. And by the way, that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people use complex language because they think that if they do that, then they sound smarter and more credible. The opposite is true. If you think about people who you consider smart and credible, I can promise you, from a communication perspective, what they do is the opposite. They replace complex language with simple language, simple words, simple sentences. And don't get me wrong, when I say that we need to speak simply, I'm not suggesting that we need to oversimplify our subject. This is not about dumbing things down. This is about finding and using language that everyone in your audience, of course, will understand. What great communicators do is they use language that a 15-year-old would understand. So, again, going back to what you said, your topic, your ideas could be complex, of course. They could be very technical. That's okay. But the way you explain them, the language you use to explain them shouldn't be.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, let's even double click on that, right? So the copywriter in me comes out every time I hear that, and I know that you, on a recent episode of your podcast with our mutual friend Jeremy Connell Wait, who was also a guest on the Aspire to Inspire podcast before as well, talking about readability, right? And things like the Gunning Fog Index, really trying to find that more simple language is such key tools when you're trying to create a presentation, when you're trying to communicate, right? What's your 2 cents on that?
I'll give you a couple of quick examples. If you take the introduction of Steve Jobs' launch of the very first iPhone, so we're talking about many years ago. If you take the first 1,000 words of that presentation and you upload them onto tools like Grammarly or the Hemingway app, there are many other tools. And these tools, in addition to giving you suggestions for improving your text, they also give you a grade. And that grade tells you how old someone needs to be for them to be able to understand what you wrote. And the same can be applied, it's not just for writing, it can be applied for speaking as well. Now, if you do this exercise with the first 1,000 words of that presentation, it returns a grade of 8 to 9 years old. Believe it or not, an 8 to 9 year old watches that presentation, at least the introduction, and he or she will be able to understand what Steve Jobs was talking about. And again, we are talking about a business presentation, launching a new product, a new piece of technology. I'll give you one other example. If you take the shareholder letters that Jeff Bezos, Amazon, sent when he was the CEO of Amazon for more than 20 years, if you take all of them, so letters sent to the shareholders of Amazon, again, business letters where it was talking about strategies and new trends and products, technology. Again, the content may be complex, it may be technical. If you do the same exercise, 70% of them returns a grade of 13 to 15 years old. So these are real examples. The bottom line is that it's okay if your content is complex. It can be complex, it can be technical, but that doesn't mean that the language we use to explain a content should also be complex.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would even add to the Jeff Bezos one, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. It's because it's quite interesting. Over the years, you see how his prose became more conversational and a lower grade level, easier to read and consume. Right. So a lot of people think that, okay, well, we're executives, we need to sound smart, but you're fully right. Like, there's a beauty in simplicity, right?
And the interesting thing, Brian, is that you will appear smart because of this. It sounds counterintuitive, but the ability to express your ideas in a simple way, in a way that's accessible, in a way that makes sense for everyone, in your specific audience, of course, that will make you appear and sound smarter than you think.
Hey, if you're getting value from today's conversation, make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss any future episodes of the Aspire to Inspire podcast.